What's really driving the recent meetings between African leaders and China's president? Is it just business as usual, or are there deeper strategic moves happening behind closed doors? These high-profile gatherings have captured global attention, sparking curiosity about what's at stake. Why now? What do both sides stand to gain? This channel has some answers, and we're here to break it down. China has long played a key role in Africa's development, offering infrastructure investments, loans, and trade deals that have transformed economies across the continent. These relationships go back decades, with China positioning itself as a partner in Africa's development. Over time, this has manifested in the construction of bridges, railways, roads, and industrial zones, which have helped boost trade and connectivity within Africa. However, the timing and intensity of these recent meetings suggest there's more going on than meets the eye. With shifting global power dynamics, rising tensions between China and the West, and African nations asserting themselves on the global stage, these discussions are about more than just economic deals. They're part of a larger narrative about the future of global governance, international alliances, and the role Africa will play in shaping the next chapter of world politics. As African leaders sit down with China's president, there are several key factors driving these interactions. First, Africa's strategic importance cannot be understated. The continent is rich in natural resources such as oil, gas, minerals, and agricultural products, all of which are essential to China's industrial growth and economic development. Africa is also home to a growing population and an emerging market that countries like China are eager to tap into. For China, a booming Africa means new consumers, more trade opportunities, and deeper partnerships. But it's not just about economics. African leaders are looking for partners who can help them develop their economies, build infrastructure, and create jobs. But they also want to diversify their global relationships. Many are frustrated with the strings attached to Western aid and are looking for more balanced partnerships that respect their sovereignty. In recent years, Africa has been exploring ways to reduce its dependency on traditional Western powers. Historically, countries in Africa have received aid and loans from Western countries or organizations like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank. These financial agreements often come with stipulations that require African nations to enact certain political or economic reforms, something many African leaders find restrictive. China, on the other hand, tends to offer loans and infrastructure projects without attaching political conditions. This has made China a preferred partner for many African nations looking for flexibility and autonomy in their development strategies. China, on the other hand, sees Africa as a vital piece of its global strategy. Beyond securing resources, China is looking for diplomatic allies and partners that can support its vision of a multipolar world where Western dominance is challenged. Africa's support is crucial in international organizations like the United Nations, where votes from African countries can shape global policies. With 54 countries, Africa holds significant voting power within global institutions, and China values the continent's political clout. The recent meetings are likely laying the groundwork for deeper cooperation on these fronts, but there's more at play than just diplomacy. China is also positioning itself as a leader in global South-to-South cooperation, which aims to strengthen partnerships between developing nations. By aligning itself with African countries, China can push forward a narrative of solidarity between nations that have historically been marginalized by Western powers. Through these strategic partnerships, China is not only expanding its economic footprint, but also gaining political influence in regions that are increasingly important to the global balance of power. What are African leaders looking to gain, and how does China's vision for Africa align with the continent's own aspirations? African leaders recognize that China is a rising global power, and many see their relationship with China as a way to bolster their own country's economic growth. By collaborating with China on infrastructure projects and trade agreements, African nations can tap into new markets and increase their global competitiveness. Moreover, China's investments in energy, telecommunications, and manufacturing sectors in Africa have the potential to transform these industries and accelerate economic development. But there's another layer to these meetings. African leaders aren't just focused on economic benefits. they're also thinking about how China's rise could help them assert more autonomy on the global stage. If Africa can strengthen its ties with China and other emerging powers, it may be able to reduce its dependency on Western nations and increase its bargaining power in international negotiations. Africa's leaders are becoming more vocal in their demands for greater representation in global governance structures, and China has shown itself willing to support these calls for reform. One of the key aspects of these meetings is how African nations are positioning themselves in the broader global power struggle. As tensions between the US and China escalate, Africa is becoming a focal point for influence. But unlike in the past, African leaders are now in a stronger position to negotiate on their own terms. They are not simply passive recipients of foreign aid or investment. They are increasingly aware of the leverage they hold and are looking for partnerships that respect their autonomy. China, with its Belt and Road Initiative, has been one of the most prominent players in building infrastructure across Africa. The initiative, which spans multiple continents, is an ambitious project aimed at expanding global trade routes and building infrastructure in developing nations. However, these recent meetings could be a signal that China is looking to take its involvement a step further, not just in terms of trade and infrastructure, but also in political and strategic alliances. Both sides have a lot to gain from strengthening ties, but African leaders are also wary of falling into a dependency trap. Concerns about debt and unequal agreements have been raised before, with critics warning that China's loans to African countries could lead to a loss of sovereignty. There are concerns that China's extensive infrastructure projects are creating unsustainable debt burdens for African nations, with fears that these countries could become overly reliant on Chinese financing. Critics argue that if African countries are unable to repay their loans, they may be forced to cede control of key infrastructure assets to China. However, African leaders seem to be approaching these meetings with a more nuanced strategy. They are looking to extract as much benefit as possible from the relationship, while ensuring they maintain control over their national interests. At the heart of it all, these meetings are about the future of Africa's role in the world. Will African nations continue to rise as key players in global governance? Will they succeed in reshaping international institutions to better reflect their interests, alongside China's push for a more multipolar world? The answers to these questions are being shaped in part by the discussions taking place right now between Africa's leaders and China's president. As these relationships evolve, we'll be keeping a close watch on the developments and their implications. If you're enjoying this analysis, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue bringing you insights into global developments that matter. So, what's next for Africa-China relations? While it's impossible to predict with complete certainty, the trajectory of their partnership seems poised for deeper cooperation. China's investments in Africa will likely continue to grow, with a focus on crucial sectors like renewable energy, digital infrastructure, and industrial development. These areas are vital to Africa's long-term economic growth, and they'll likely be at the top of the agenda in future discussions between African leaders and China. But beyond economic cooperation, China is likely to take a more active role in supporting African countries on the global stage. This could mean offering diplomatic backing for African-led initiatives or collaborating to push for reforms to international institutions. As China continues to challenge Western dominance in global affairs, Africa may become an even more important partner in its efforts to reshape the international system. For African leaders, these meetings represent an opportunity to further their development agendas while positioning themselves as key players in a rapidly shifting world. By strengthening ties with China, African nations gain access to the resources, technology, and political support they need to achieve their long-term goals. At the same time, they must remain cautious to ensure that their partnerships with China remain mutually beneficial and do not erode their independence. In conclusion, the recent meetings between African leaders and China's president are about more than just economic cooperation. They reflect a broader effort to reshape the global order. As Africa continues to rise as a key player on the international stage, its relationship with China will be crucial in shaping its future. This channel will be watching closely as these developments unfold, and we'll be here to provide you with the insights and analysis you need to stay informed. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Let us know your thoughts on the topic, and stay tuned for more updates on this and other important global issues. Thanks for watching.